Well, I watched with interest the Super Tuesday election returns on TV the other night. I have to confess, I'm a political geek from way back. When I was just a kid, I used to sit and watch political conventions on our little black and white TV from start to finish, alone, for hours. Well, on Super Tuesday, as I was watching TV, I heard the political pundits claim with ever-increasing fervor that this election campaign is the most negative, hateful, destructive in American history. Not so fast. The worst, most vicious election campaign in American history was the election of 1800. Yes, 1800, the good old days. It was between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, both founding fathers, both authors and signatories of the Declaration of Independence, both political giants and heroes who have towns and buildings and monuments named after them. Adams was the incumbent president, being opposed by his sitting vice president, Jefferson. You see, in those days, whoever got the most electoral votes became president, and whoever came in second became vice president, even if they were from different parties. Now, in order to defeat his boss, Jefferson hired a political propagandist named James Callender to write slanderous, fabricated stories about Adams. So awful were the things that Callender wrote about Adams that he was arrested, tried by a jury, and thrown into jail. Adams was called repulsive, a gross hypocrite, the most egregious fool upon the continent. He was called a hermaphrodite. Now, not even Donald Trump has used that one. Alexander Hamilton, who was in Adams' own party, called him insane, mad, and a bastard. One story circulated that President Adams had procured 2 mistresses from London and had them brought to Washington, D.C. But Adams gave as good as he got. Jefferson was denounced as a weakling. Heard that one before? A hopeless visionary, more of a Frenchman than an American. Jefferson was called a godless atheist. Rumors flew around New England that if Jefferson were elected president, he would confiscate everyone's Bibles. Stories spread about Jefferson's personal morality, including tales about his sexual relations with his slaves at Monticello. And I could go on and on. What was the election of 1800 about? High ideals? Constitutional principles? A vision for America? No. It was about winning, pure and simple. It was about power and control. It was about personal agendas and partisan party politics. What about the common good? What about promoting the general welfare as described in the U.S. Constitution? Sadly, it was not to be found. What is the common good? Well, there are lots of different ways to define it. And over the millennia, and yes, I literally mean millennia, thoughtful people have been offering different visions of the common good. Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero theorized on the concept of the political common good. More recently, Harvard political philosopher John Rawls suggested that the political common good is, quote, certain general conditions that are equally to everyone's advantage. Augustine and Aquinas offered an ethical and moral vision of the common good, which became the foundation of Catholic moral theology. Marx and Engels gave us an economic vision of the common good, whether you agree with it or not. Perhaps you prefer the more modernized version of the economic common good, Bernie Sanders' democratic socialism. Are any of you involved in justice issues? Many of them are about the common good from a legal perspective. To put it in its simplest terms, the common good is about the general welfare for all. It's about the golden rule. It's about loving your neighbor as yourself. But can we, should we, vote for the common good? Jason Brennan, in his book, The Ethics of Voting, argues that citizens do not have a duty to vote. But if they vote, they have a duty to vote for the common good. Now, this flies in the face of everything we have been taught about the voting booth. We are taught to ask ourselves, who do I like? Who will meet my needs? Who will promote my agenda? Who will help me get ahead? But how do you vote for the common good? Well, first, we have to get outside ourselves. We have to look beyond ourselves. We have to understand the needs of others and care about them. Second, we have to take our voting booth and turn it into a confessional booth. In it, we have to admit that we are inherently selfish and that this must change. Third, we have to take action. Pull a lever, mark a ballot for the betterment of others and not for ourselves. It requires effort on our part. Some of you may remember the story of the Good Samaritan. It's a story about a man who was beaten and left dying on the side of the road. Two different religious leaders passed by and ignored the desperate man. Then another man, an outcast, stopped and not only helped him, but took him to a shelter where he received medical care and was revived, and he paid for it out of his own pocket. That's caring for others. That's living for the common good. But I must admit that this is not easy to do. I don't do it perfectly. But we have to try. We have to try. Especially in the world that I live in, the political world. We can serve the common good in a lot of different ways. But let me urge you not to give up on renewing and redeeming the political systems of our country and our world. Remember Jefferson and Adams? Well, after the election of 1800, they never spoke. They had nothing to do with each other for 12 years. Finally, through the help of their friends, the ice was broken. Adams exclaimed, "I always have loved Jefferson, and I love him still." So they started writing regularly. They shared books. They reminisced about old battles and victories long past. They gossiped about the new guys in the White House, Madison and Monroe. Finally, on July 4th, 1826, the whole United States was celebrating the 50th anniversary of the birth of our nation. But neither Jefferson nor Adams could attend. Both men lay dying. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Jefferson died quietly as the bells of Charlottesville rang in the valley below, celebrating the 4th of July. And Adams, in his farmhouse in Quincy, Mass., lay peacefully in his bed, still lucid, but slipping away. Just before his death at 6:20 that evening, Adams stirred and whispered clearly, "Thomas Jefferson survives." They died not with enmity, but with embrace. They died having lived for others and giving us a chance to live for others. They died having created a nation which offers hope for the common good. So if you vote for the common good this November, America will be a better place. Not because of who the president is, but because of who you are.